Did you know that your parenting style can lead to your child being involved in drug use? Well, keep watching this video. This is Dianita and welcome back to Barbados Matters, where we check out the sites and discuss the issues. So those of you who've watched any of my previous videos know that I like to take you to a spot in Barbados before I get to my topic. So in this video, I'm taking you to the east of the island, where I make a stop firstly by Cherry Tree Hill, which borders St. Peter and St. Andrew. Look at this site. I'm currently at least 850 meters above sea level. Whilst I'll take you there another time, St. Nicholas Abbey with all its beauty is close by, as well as the St. Nicholas Heritage Railway, which is the steam engine that takes a 45-minute historic tour and gives you another wonderful opportunity to take in the sights from the area. But look here, I just love visiting Cherry Tree Hill for this wonderful site, and there are some lovely craft vendors here selling their own creations of jewellery, ornaments, leather craft and more. Just look at this awesome view. I'm looking over the eastern part of the island, as well as what is known as the Scotland District. And in the distance, you can see the Morgan Lewis Sugar Windmill. Here's a closer look at the windmill. It's straight down the road from Cherry Tree and located in St. Andrew. The Morgan Lewis windmill was previously used in the 18th and 19th century to grind the sugar cane to make sugar. It was still intact until it sustained damage by Hurricane Elsa on the 2nd of July 2021. Here you can see the damaged wing. Such a shame, but I've been reliably informed that it should be fixed in due course, so I hope so sooner rather than later. And I can't be in this area without driving straight onto the magnetic or gravity hill, still known as Cherry Tree Hill or Morgan Lewis Hill. I'm sure a lot of people, tourists as well as locals, don't even know this wonder of the world even exists. It's this spot here, just away down from the Morgan Lewis windmill, and it's not signposted, so you only really know by word of mouth or if a tour guide or someone tells you about it. So I'm not sure if you can see here, but the car is in neutral and the engine is switched off. Watch the car reverse up the hill all on its own. My friend almost let the car go into the bush. But look again. And you can see it here from the outside. When researching this phenomenon, it was said that it's some kind of optical illusion, but you can clearly see the car rolling back, up the hill with the engine off. And it certainly was no illusion that the car nearly ended up in the bush because she wasn't steering the car properly. Anyway, whatever the explanation, it's definitely a place to visit and check it out for yourself. I understand that there are only a few of these magnetic or gravity hills around the world, and I'm proud to say that we have one in Barbados. I was asked to do a webinar presentation the other day on parenting styles and how they can lead to drug abuse. So afterwards I thought I should make a video on it so that others could benefit. Now let me say right off the bat that I'm not a parenting specialist. There are no parenting experts. We all make mistakes and we all learn as we go along. But nevertheless, parenting styles and how they have the potential to lead to drug use and by extension other deviant behaviour in our children is so worthy of attention and discussion. So what do we actually mean when we speak of parenting styles? Simply put, it's the way in which parents raise their children. It's the expectations and demands that we place on children, or lack thereof in certain instances. It's the style of discipline used to enforce the expectations, which will include rules that may be established and a parent's attentiveness to those rules. So parenting styles basically refers to a parent's demandingness. the extent that he or she controls the child's behaviour or demand maturity from the child. When I say child, I'll be referring to the pre-adolescent child and the adolescent or young person, as they're often referred as. In addition, parenting styles refers to responsiveness, which is the degree or extent that parents are accepting and sensitive to the child's emotional and developmental needs. We all know that parents can provide the physical needs, such as food and shelter, but for a number of reasons may not be providing for the child's emotional and developmental needs. So just on a side, working within the criminal justice system for over 21 years, when assessing offenders, attention is always given to whether their developmental, practical and emotional needs were met by parents or guardians, as this is a risk factor for future offending and obviously other deviant behaviour, which would include drug use. So, when we look at the different types of parenting styles, parents, and we can include grandparents, aunts, uncles and other guardians, I want you to think about what style you predominantly use and what are the instances that you may have used a different parenting style. It's important for us to all have some introspection at times, as that's the only way that we can assess whether the methods we use with our children are effective. So what are the parenting styles? Well, there's authoritarian, permissive, uninvolved, which is also known as neglectful, and authoritative. So let's look at the authoritarian style of parenting first. What are the characteristics? Parents that use this style are disciplinarians, strict with very little negotiation with children. This parent will think, negotiate? I'm the adult, I don't negotiate with a child. It's my way or the highway. Do as I say, no questions asked. That's one-way communication. This style of parenting is less nurturing and doesn't stimulate or encourage the growth or development of the child. A parent adopting this style largely places high expectations on the child, which is not always easily achieved, and readily uses punishment, which can include inflicting physical punishment when their demands or expectations are not met. Let's look at the associated outcome of authoritarian parenting styles. Children often have lower academic achievement. If you think about it, the parent has high expectations but is not able to foster the environment or mindset where the child is able to learn. The child more often has low self-esteem due to lack of warmth and nurturing of the parent, develops feelings of inadequacies because they can't meet the parent's high expectations and demands. The parent may be critical, often openly showing their disappointment or frustrations if the child doesn't meet their expectations. And this could be academically, in sports, or if they set other various tasks for the child to complete. The child's social skills may be less developed because they don't have the opportunity to discuss issues, feelings, and consider the outcomes of their actions, for example, which hinders a child's critical thinking. Now, this is extremely important, as it's this critical thinking that allows for a child to consider the consequences of their actions. Weigh up the pros and cons before acting. This style can lead to more impulsive behaviour in a child. And then as a parent, you're wondering, why is this child not listening to me? I gave him some lashes the other day and he's gone and done the same thing again. And there you have it, more lashes. But what you're really doing is producing a child who may lie and cover up their actions to avoid punishment, and not one who has the ability to think and make good judgments. And so it's having the reverse effect that the punishment is supposed to correct. And not only that, you're producing a child that thinks aggression or violence is the way to solve issues or disputes. They're violent in school, when playing sports, interacting with the others, and then it continues into adulthood and then in their relationships also. Additionally, authoritarian style of parenting can lead to the child developing mental illness because they're constantly on edge, have anxiety. They may want to do better, but they know they can never meet the parents' high demands or expectations, and in some instances have suffered physically as well as emotionally as a result. This parenting style can therefore significantly lead to the child or adolescent being involved in drug and alcohol use. And I mean more than simple experimentation that can be associated with adolescent behaviour, but more so abuse of drugs or addiction to numb the pain and ease feelings of inadequacies and anxiety, as I mentioned earlier. Again, my experience has shown that this type of parenting style can lead to the child being involved in other deviant behaviours, not only drug use, which I will touch on a bit later. The next parenting style to be considered is permissive parenting. Now, parents who adopt this style tend to let their children do what they like. There are no rules. They offer little or no guidance or direction to the child and have minimal expectations. The child is provided with no consequences to their actions, and the parents act more like they're friends with the child rather than it being a clear parent-child relationship. Within this parenting style, communication is open and the child is able to have input and opinions into everything. But the parent doesn't make the decisions. It's the child that decides for themselves. Now, whilst this may sound quite ridiculous, funny enough, this parenting style can, however, result in a warm and nurturing relationship between parent and child. And I guess it's because it allows for the child to feel part of a decision-making process, that their feelings and opinions matter, which can lead to children who are confident and expressive. So what's the associated behaviours with this type of parenting style? Well, the child could also be impulsive because there are no boundaries or expectations imposed and no consequences enforced on them, which can also lead to poorer social skills. They've not been taught to control their behaviour or consider how their actions affect other persons around them. So in some instances, this can create problems within the parent and child's relationship. And I think we can all agree that a child needs and wants to be parented. That's why they push the buttons to get a reaction at times. And in the absence of discipline, I think a child actually loses respect for the parent. And lastly, this type of parenting can lead to the child developing egocentric personalities, where they become self-centered with no regard for others. And we can see that in children who refuse to share and have no regard for other children's property, whether it's at school or within the home, and as young people, even in the community. If they want something, they're going to get it regardless of the means. Then we have the uninvolved parenting style, which can be seen as neglectful parenting. Here, there's no particular discipline style at all. The parent lets the child mostly do what he or she wants to do, but the difference between this and permissive parenting, which is more so indulging the child, in this style, the parent has no communication with the child at all, and there are few or no expectations or rules. Now, this could be for a number of reasons. The parent may not have the ability to parent. They may be abusing drugs or alcohol, have mental health issues, and have just checked out from their parental responsibilities, leaving the child to practically raise themselves or be raised by the persons around them. And you know, this could end up being negative and unscrupulous persons. So what are the associated outcomes of the uninvolved parenting style? Well, again, the child may be impulsive since they have no rules imposed on them, no expectations placed on them, have little ability for critical thinking, and so again are unable to consider the consequences of their actions. The child raised by an uninvolved parent or parents are obviously more at risk for drug use and other deviant behaviours and criminal behaviour. In the Barbadian context, when we think about our boys, often they gravitate to the fellas on the block. And this would obviously have a significant impact on their behaviour because they'll mimic what they see there, which will be drug use and crime in some instances. Now, I recognise that not all blocks are negative, but it is acknowledged that in some areas this will be a significant problem. And obviously, as they're allowed to associate with whom they want, they may associate with peers and adults from whom they seek validation, love and affection, and not always positive persons, as we know. The child or young person can also get involved in crime to support themselves, as the uninvolved parent may not even be providing for their basic needs of food, shelter, adequate clothing, etc. Often you'll hear of these children wandering in the community, associating with the block culture, where the boys may attach to fellas who they consider to be male role models, and are then exposed to all sorts of situations whilst on the block, as I mentioned just now. And I have to emphasize that girls and boys can be at risk of sexual abuse and exploitation because of the uninvolved parent in their quest to have their needs met. Now, this style of parenting, for more reasons than one, may be the biggest reason that some children may engage in drug or alcohol abuse and have addiction issues. And this can be for a number of reasons. Due to the parent not being involved, the child may be exposed to persons engaged in drug use, but they may also abuse drugs because of their mental health. This child may have feelings of abandonment, which can also lead to a whole set of issues such as low self-esteem and self-worth, anxiety, attachment issues, which leads to their inability to have meaningful relationships with other persons, and this can also continue throughout adulthood. And as a result of these feelings, the child can engage in self-harming behaviour, which can include cutting or hitting or punching themselves, behaviours such as binge eating or starving themselves, suicidal thoughts or ideation, and the same drug or alcohol addiction or misuse. And the last parenting style to be considered is authoritative parenting. Here there are clear rules set for the child. There's consistent and age-appropriate communication with the child, using language that the child or adolescent understands. The relationship is warm and responsive and provides the child with support. And because the demands are communicated, the child is more aware of their responsibilities and expectations of them. And since the parent values communication, it also promotes the child developing critical thinking skills and is not as dependent on the parent for direction, and so produces a more independent child or young person. So what's the associated outcome of authoritative parenting? Well, it develops a child with high self-esteem, better social skills than the other parenting styles, higher academic performance, and that stands to reason since the child is happy, confident, and well-adjusted. The child is less likely to develop mental illness or engage in deviant behaviour, including drug use, as there are less risk factors to lead to such behaviours. And just to sum up the styles, the more authoritative the style, the more demanding it is, but it's equally warm and accepting, compared to authoritarian, which is also demanding but is cold and unaccepting. Then there's the permissive style, which is warm and accepting but is undemanding on the child, as compared to the uninvolved parent, who is also undemanding on the child but are cold and unaccepting. So it's clear that authoritative parenting style brings about the most positive outcomes in children because it's demanding but warm and accepting. It should be said that a parent does not always use just the one parenting style, however. I think we can all think about times when we use different parenting styles based even on the time of the day or how we're feeling emotionally at the time. For example, in the morning, after a good night's sleep, we can be authoritative, allow for much discussion about our demands and expectations with our child. And other times, like at night and after a hard day's work and we're tired, or if we're sick, we can easily become the uninvolved parent, where we say, do what you want to do. I ain't got the energy, uninvolved. Or we could say, do as I say and don't ask no questions, authoritarian. So let's not forget that those times can impact children also. It's also important to acknowledge that while you may use one type of parenting style for one child and feel that it worked, it may not work for the other child who becomes rebellious and combative. You know, you may think a style has worked because the discipline, maybe even physical discipline, you think worked with one child, And perhaps they've not gotten back into trouble at school or with the police again. But remember, you also have to think about how the parenting style may have impacted your child psychologically or emotionally in ways that you cannot overtly see. And not only that, just because one child was submissive, another child, as I said before, becomes rebellious and aggressive. And remember, if you are parenting by physical punishment, what you may be teaching that child is that the only way to settle disputes is by violence. And then we wonder why they're aggressive and violent at school or in the community. So given that authoritarian parenting is the preferred parenting style, acknowledging that all children are different, you should vary your practice but not your style. For example, with some children, just communicating how disappointing a behaviour has been is sufficient. But with another child, punishments such as banning use of their cell phone or PlayStation or not allowing them to play outside for a particular time would be an effective punishment. I just want to emphasize the types of parenting practices and behaviours that can contribute to drug use in a child or adolescent. Well, there's little or no discipline, no consequences for negative behaviour, not aware of the child's whereabouts, no knowledge of the child's peers, disinterest or lack of input in the child's education, not ensuring the child is involved in pro-social activities like sports or other organised pursuits. And I can't emphasise this enough. My experience has found that the majority of young persons who engage in deviant behaviour and crime are not engaged in pro-social activities. So as a parent, neglecting this area can increase the risk of a child being involved in drug use. Additional behaviours and practices by parents and guardians that can lead to drug use is lack of communication, controlling behaviour, which includes being over-involved with the child, micromanaging everything they do, being too strict or too rigid with respect to discipline. And often what some parents do when upset with a child is to withdraw affection or attention for periods of time. Tell the child, don't come around me, go outside, I don't want to see your face. And then we wonder why a child is seeking attention, often in the wrong way. And we all know or have seen instances where parents have shamed a child or humiliated them in front of persons or in public. Another factor is inconsistent parenting, where a parent may punish a child one day for a particular behaviour, and then the next time the behaviour is repeated, the parent does nothing. This obviously sends mixed messages and is confusing for a child. It's important that one parent supports the discipline of another parent. Again, we don't want mixed messages. Plus, we all know how one child can play one parent off against another parent for their own gain. And this is especially important in the instances where parents are no longer in relationships. It's important not to engage in negative talk about the other parent, and poor co-parenting practices can have a detrimental effect on children and increase their risk of drug use and other deviant behaviours. Two separate homes with different parenting styles can be confusing for a child. And so it's so important for co-parents to communicate effectively for the benefit of the child. And I must mention here adverse childhood experiences, also known as ACEs, which can have a significant impact on children right into adulthood and can obviously lead to drug use and other maladaptive behaviours. If you've not already watched my video on adverse childhood experiences, please do. But I'll just mention them here without going into too much details, as you will get more from the ACEs video. Factors that are considered adverse childhood experiences and lead to trauma are parental abandonment. Often we include death of a parent or divorce here. A family member going into prison. If a child has witnessed domestic abuse in the home or themselves have experienced some form of physical or sexual abuse. And if a member of the household is experiencing significant problems with substance abuse. These can all lead to drug use and other negative behaviours in children and throughout adulthood. Why is it important to be aware of all that I've said? Because the parenting styles and the associated behaviours and practices can lead to the following behaviours. And at this time, let's think about our own children's behaviours, particularly the authoritarian and uninvolved parenting styles can lead to the child bullying at school, disruptive behaviours, truancy, a general lack of interest in school, which therefore leads to low academic performance, resistance to authority figures, negative peer associations, aggressive or violent behaviour, criminal behaviour, and as I've said, can lead to drug or alcohol abuse and addiction. What are the reasons that young people give for drug use? We often hear them say, to relieve stress. And I know we always think, what has a child got to be stressed about? They don't have to go to work every day and pay bills. But often it's with respect to parents and the treatment meted out by them, often unfair in the child's opinion. So children say they use drugs to numb the pain, which is really to suppress feelings and emotions. They use drugs to fit in with peers and also, as I've previously said, due to low self-esteem. And most importantly, because no boundaries are set by parents, so they will do as they like and mimic adult behaviours. So how to proceed from here on? It's important as parents and guardians to recognise if your parenting style or practices may have resulted in any of the behaviours that I've spoken about being exhibited by your child. And if so, seek interventions early to correct some of the behaviours. It's never too late to turn it all around. I would have mentioned before, low academic achievement in some instances, so that's where it's important to access remedial and/or top-up classes for your child. A large amount of young offenders I work with are either not fulfilling their potential academically or are operating at an educational level significantly younger than their years. This obviously affects their self-esteem and the way they will want to deflect from themselves whilst in classes. And so, addressing this area can reverse that situation. Please ensure your child is involved in pro-social activities wherever possible, as this increases discipline, self-confidence, and their ability to interact with others. When I've used sports in sessions, leadership skills quickly develop in children. They have to follow instructions and abide by rules, and so that develops their discipline. For example, playing football and they get a kick in the shin, it teaches them not to retaliate with every foul. Therefore, controlling their emotions and dealing with conflict, all transferable skills. If your child is impulsive or easily angered, access anger management or conflict resolution sessions for your child. This will provide them with the skills to deal with conflict situations. And it stands to reason that if you suspect your child may be involved in drug use, then refer them for drug education or counselling. Often I hear parents say, well, I've never seen my child smoking. Like you have to wait to actually see them smoking before you believe it. But yet all the evidence points to them using drugs. Random drug tests can easily be carried out if you want confirmation of drug use, and this can show levels of use to see if they're engaged in occasional use or high levels of drug use, and then any support can be tailored to their needs. And lastly, whilst I've spoken about interventions for the child, it's pointless if as parents your own issues, concerns, parenting styles are not addressed. Whenever I've coordinated programs with young offenders, a parenting element in the program is incorporated, as it's recognised that you cannot work with a child in isolation and expect to change their behaviour. So please access parenting classes if you're having challenges. It's not saying that you're a bad parent, but the classes help to reinforce and develop your skills and give you a forum to discuss issues that you may be having with your child. If you're no longer in a relationship with the other parent and experiencing challenges co-parenting, communication may have broken down, then get support for the benefit of your child. So what are the desired parental practices? To sum up, listen to your child's thoughts and feelings. It doesn't take away from your role as a parent. Sometimes the child just wants to be heard. Provide appropriate and consistent consequences. Label the behaviour, not the child. It's the behaviour you don't like, not the child that you dislike. Do not withhold attention because the child has upset you. Show consistent love and affection. Let them make mistakes and learn from them. We as adults have all made mistakes. So what's the takeaway from all of this? As parents and guardians, we learn as we go along. With the right tools and patience, you can choose the type of parent you want to be, and more often than not, get the desired positive outcome that you want for your child. And lastly, we all need support. So access the support and interventions available. Let's not forget, parenting is the hardest job in the world, but the most fulfilling job. So let's do the best we can for our child. I'll leave a list of agencies here where you can access support or advice in Barbados with respect to any of the issues I've spoken of. So I hope this video has been informative and given us all an opportunity to reflect on our own parenting styles and how we can improve the outcomes for our children and wards. Thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and leave your comments below.